A king stood on a battlefield after his greatest victory. Around him lay 100,000 bodies. He had won everything. And in that silence, surrounded by the cost of winning, he wept. Not from weakness, from seeing, perhaps for the first time, what he had actually done. The Bhagavad Gita opens on a battlefield too. Arjuna, the great warrior, looks across the field at his own kinsman and drops his bow. Krishna's response is not to shame him. It is to ask a deeper question. What are you actually fighting for? This is the heart of dharma, not the rules we follow, but the truth we answer to when the noise falls away. The teaching says that action without awareness is just momentum. And momentum, unchecked, becomes destruction. The ancient voice asks each of us, before you act, do you know why you are acting? Ashoka was one of the most powerful rulers the ancient world had ever seen. He commanded vast armies. He expanded his empire through force. And then came the war at Kalinga. By every measure of conquest, he won. But what he saw afterward, the widows, the orphaned children, the fields that would not grow again, broke something open in him that power had kept sealed. He did not simply feel regret, he turned completely. He embraced the path of the Buddha, non-violence, compassion, the dignity of all living beings. He carved his transformation into stone pillars across his empire, not to glorify himself, but to remind his people, and perhaps himself, of what he had learned. He built hospitals. He planted trees along roads for shade. He sent emissaries of peace rather than armies. The man who had ordered 100,000 deaths spent the rest of his life trying to reduce suffering by even one. This is not a story about a king. It is a story about what happens when a human being finally stops running from what they have done and lets it change them. The first lesson is this. Thus, awareness is not the enemy of strength. It is its highest form. We live in a culture that treats doubt as weakness and reflection as hesitation. But Ashoka's turning point was not weakness. It was the moment he became fully human. The Stoics called this anagnorisis recognition, seeing clearly what is. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself every morning, not because he was broken, but because he knew that power, without self-examination, becomes a kind of blindness. The second lesson is that transformation is not erasure. Ashoka did not pretend Kalinga never happened. He carried it. He let it be the weight that shaped everything that followed. Buddhism teaches that suffering, when we stop resisting it, becomes the very ground of compassion. The wound does not disappear. It becomes the teacher. And the third, it is never too late to turn. Not after one mistake, not after 100,000. The path does not close, it waits. Here is the practice. Tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself one question. Not with judgment, but with honesty. Where am I acting from momentum rather than intention? Maybe it is a relationship where you keep responding the same way out of habit. Maybe it is work you do without knowing why anymore. Maybe it is an old anger you carry because putting it down feels like losing. You do not need to solve it tonight. Just see it. Ashoka's change did not happen in a single moment of weeping. It happened because he let himself look. That looking is the beginning. Sit with the question for 5 minutes. Write one sentence about what you see. That sentence is your Kalinga, and it can become your turning point. A river does not mourn the stones it has worn away. It simply keeps moving. And in moving, it becomes clear. Ashoka's story is not really about a king from the ancient world. It is about the moment any of us stops and asks, "Is this who I want to be?" That question, asked honestly, is one of the most powerful forces in a human life. It has toppled empires within people. It has built something quieter and more lasting in their place. You do not need a battlefield to find your turning point. Sometimes it is a conversation, a loss, a long night, a single moment of seeing clearly. The path is always open. The question is whether you are willing to look. Subscribe to LifeVeda for daily wisdom that transforms your life.